Hey, and welcome to The Explainer. We hear the phrase, the economy, all the time, right? It's growing, it's shrinking, it's in trouble. But what does that even mean? How do you measure something so huge? Well, today, we're going to find the yardstick.
So it really all boils down to this one big question. How in the world do you put a single number on everything a country makes and buys and sells over an entire year? I mean, from the cup of coffee you had this morning to massive construction projects and satellites in space, how do you measure all of that? It's a giant puzzle, and today we're going to put the pieces together.
Okay, so before we can even think about measuring something, we've got to go back to square one. We have to understand the one single problem that the entire field of economics is trying to solve. It's this constant tension between what we all want and what we actually have.
It really boils down to something super simple, something we all experience every day. On one hand, you have needs, the basics, right? Food, water, a roof over your head. But on the other hand, you have wants. And let's be honest, that list of wants is pretty much infinite. There's always a new phone, a nicer car, a bigger vacation. And this clash between our endless wants and the world's limited resources, that creates the single biggest idea in economics.
And that big idea is scarcity. It's the simple, hard fact that there just isn't enough of everything to go around for everyone to have everything they want. And because of that, every single society has to make some tough choices. What are we going to make? And who's going to get it? All right, so if scarcity is the big problem, what's the solution? Well, societies have to get organized. And to do that, every economy, doesn't matter if it's here or on the other side of the world, relies on a core set of ingredients, kind of like a recipe, to produce everything we need and want.
Economists call these the 4 factors of production. First up, you've got land. And we're not just talking about dirt here. This is all natural resources. Oil, water, forests, you name it. Then you absolutely need labor. That's the human brain power and muscle that gets the work done. Next, you have capital. Now this isn't just money. It's the man-made stuff that helps us produce more, like factories, computers, and delivery trucks. And finally, you need that special sauce, entrepreneurship. That's the idea, the risk-taking that brings the other 3 together to create something new.
And here's the really cool part. This is where production magically turns into income for people. Every one of those factors gets paid for its contribution. The owners of land get rent. Labor earns wages. The people who provide the capital get interest. And the entrepreneur, if they're successful, earns a profit. You see the cycle? Making stuff is what creates the money that lets us buy stuff. It's the engine that powers the whole thing. Okay, deep breath. We've got the why, that's scarcity. We've got the what, those are the factors of production. So now we're finally ready to ask the big one. How do we actually measure the how much? How do we add up the total output of an entire country?
But this is where it gets surprisingly tricky. You can't just add up the price of everything sold. If you do, you'll hit a huge roadblock called double counting. Think about it. If you count the value of the wheat sold by a farmer, and then you count the value of the flour made from that same wheat, whoops, you've just counted the wheat twice. If you do that for millions of products, your final number is going to be completely wrong.
So, to get around this, economists came up with a really clever idea called the value-added approach. Let's walk through a super simple model. A farmer grows and sells a batch of wheat for 6,000 rupees. Boom, that's 6,000 rupees of value created. Now, a flour mill buys that wheat and grinds it into flour, which they sell for 8,000 rupees. Did they create 8,000 in new value? No, they took the 6,000 worth of wheat and added 2,000 rupees of value. Then, a baker takes that flour and bakes it into bread, selling the loaves for a total of 14,000 rupees. Their value add is 6,000 rupees. And that right there, that's the magic trick. Instead of adding up all the sales, we just add up the value added at each step. So the farmer's 6,000 plus the miller's 2,000 plus the baker's 6,000 gives us a true total of 14,000 rupees. And notice something? That's the exact same price as the final product, the bread. We've perfectly captured the total value without counting anything twice.
And all of this whole value-added process, leads us right to the most famous number in all of economics, gross domestic product, or you know it as GDP.
It is the official name for what we just did. It's the total value of all the final goods and services, like the bread, not the wheat or the flour, that are produced inside a country's borders over a specific period, like a year.
All right, so GDP. That's the answer. Case closed, right? We can all go home. Well, not so fast. Because even though GDP is an incredibly important number, we have to ask, does it really tell us the whole story about how a country is doing? I mean, really think about it. When you hear on the news that a country's GDP went up by 3%, does that automatically mean your life got better? Does it mean the average person is happier, healthier, or more secure? Well, the answer is, it's a lot more complicated than that.
Okay, let's look at one of the biggest ways GDP can fool us: inflation. Check this out. In 2021, the nominal GDP shot up to 20,000. You'd think, wow, what a great year, the economy doubled. But did it? Look closer. We produced the exact same amount of bread, 1,000 units. The only thing that changed was the price. The price doubled. That's why economists are obsessed with real GDP. It adjusts for inflation, showing us if we actually produced more stuff. And in this case, real production didn't grow at all.
And honestly, the blind spots go way, way deeper than just inflation. GDP doesn't care about the environmental damage caused by production. It completely ignores all the valuable, unpaid work done at home, caring for family, cooking, cleaning. A rising GDP can also hide massive income inequality, where all the new wealth goes to a tiny fraction of people. It tells you nothing about the quality of healthcare or education. At the end of the day, you have to remember what GDP is. It's a calculator. It measures economic output, not our overall well-being.
So, all of this, it brings us to one last, but maybe the most important distinction of all. We've spent all this time talking about how to measure the size of an economy, but what's the actual goal? Is it just to make the number bigger every year, or is it something more profound?
You see, there's a huge difference between economic growth and economic development. Think of it like this. Growth is just about making the economic pie bigger. It's a number, right? It's quantitative, an increase in real GDP. But development, that's qualitative. That's about making people's lives fundamentally better, improving their health, their education, giving them more choices and opportunities. And here's the absolute key takeaway. You can have growth without having development. And that's exactly why, today, you hear economists and policymakers talking so much about something called inclusive growth. It's a pretty simple but powerful idea. The real goal isn't just to grow the economy, but to make sure that the benefits of that growth are shared fairly across all parts of society. It's about creating a system where a rising tide actually does lift all boats, not just a few luxury yachts. So we're left with this really big idea to think about. We started out trying to find a yardstick for the economy, and we found it. It's GDP. But along the way, we also found all of its limitations. So the real question for all of us becomes, if we want to know if a country is truly succeeding for its people, what else, beyond just GDP, should we be paying attention to?